My name is Paul Horton. I'm Director of KT Studio, an applied research group here in Perth in Western Australia, and I've been working for probably the last 4 years with Dr. Stephen Quinton, looking at the impacts of a changing world on the appropriateness of learning models to that world. Sorry I can't be there to give this talk in person, but what we decided to do was for me to open the discussion by looking at some of those changes that we've been documenting over that time. One of the key features of most education systems at the moment is that it's based on an industrial world, in essence. A world where thinking is often very sequential, very linear. We use mechanical metaphors to describe things, and often we apply technology in the form of enhancing process or automating process. What's happened over the last 15 years is we've been through a transitional phase where we've seen the rise of networks, the interconnection of things like finance systems and trading systems, and generally that networked metaphor fueled by increasing pervasiveness of ICT has brought a new world to us, and as I say, that's a transition to an environment or an economy which is based on ideas compared to the economy of perhaps the last century. It was based on an economy of things. So an economy of ideas is then, it's important to understand what knowledge is and how we leverage it, how we come up with new ideas through creativity or design, and what are the features of that environment so that we can start to look at appropriate learning models for that environment. So some of the features of these knowledge intensive economies or knowledge environments are that they're more like ecosystems. We're starting to describe them more with organic metaphors. There's a focus on the individual and on the possibilities of personalisation, and yet these environments become pervasive. So the technologies that support that are both about collaboration and communication between individuals, but also the capacity to assemble a very personalised view of either the relationships within a network or the content that might help increase understanding. So that's one shift that we've seen, a shift to a different sort of an economy. Underpinning that is this context for knowledge. What we're seeing here is how we interact with the real world. So as an individual, we intend to do something. So I'm speaking here. I intend something to be transmitted to an audience, so that's the action. We perceive what happens. Normally I'd have something a little more responsive than a camera, but then when we reflect on that, we can see that this is a way of communicating, of exchanging information, of making transactions, and much of the learning that goes on currently in institutions is based around those contexts. What happens inside someone's head, though, is we're continually tuning and testing our individual models, the way we perceive the world. So this testing comes out in the cycle to the real world and then back, and we make the changes to the model. So inside this abstract view of who we are resides knowledge. Knowledge is what we know. It's where we experience things, where we save our experiences. It's where we're creative, and that double loop is what we're starting to call deep learning. So if anything, the big shift to an economy of ideas has brought with it this shift to the increasing awareness of the importance of these abstract concepts. What I'd like to do now then is to look at some other drivers for how we can start to leverage these new environments, and they will form the context for the discussion of new and appropriate learning models. One of those is being able to connect with the right people and the right information. So inherently there's this compromise between the richness of an engagement or an experience and the number of people that can be involved. So when we start to add technology to the mix, if we add it in a relatively simplistic way, we can have more people involved, still with a relatively less rich experience, or we can increase the experience for a few people. With the web, what came along was the possibility of interconnected networks, more people with access to those, and the ability to move around information in a much more sophisticated way. What we're looking at, though, for this economy of ideas is the capacity to eliminate some of those compromises and start to explore environments that bring together the richness of human engagement with rich media and all those possibilities and involve more people so we can attain those critical masses. Now, the way we've started to look at those sorts of things is in both a number of projects that we've undertaken over that period of time. I'd like to quickly show you one or two. Now, these projects, that we have the URLs both in the paper, and you can ask Stephen for them later. This is one project that we did, so we're using open source software, open standards, and it's based around the concept of information objects. So this site has been generated based around the capacity to put objects into an object store and dynamically create this space, if you like. So we've moved to a particular section. We can see where it is in the hierarchy of classifications there. Here's a compound object, which is comprised of a picture, which we can look at, and a piece of text. So that's an object in its own right. The system has then found other objects which bear a relationship to this particular one, and we can start to then navigate around this space based on those connections. So as new objects are added, then they will come into this navigation space and also into the related items. Another thing we can do, because we're using objects, is actually change the nature of the site. So with one click and no extra work in terms of authoring, we can experience this object or series of objects as text only. So that starts to overcome the issues of access. We can deliver this through a mobile phone or through a satellite, and then with one click we can go straight back to the graphical version. The other important thing is that we start to experience these more complex information environments through different points of view. Here's a category view, and we can try to find our way through the hierarchy. As these environments get more complex, that becomes more restrictive. So given that Rottnest Island is a place, we can then change our navigational view and start to look at all of those objects based on where they occur on the island. So we can start to look at different spots around the island. We can zoom in on this particular part of the island. We can move in and around it. We can pick a place and look at the particular events or objects that occur around that place and move to them. So we're starting to navigate all of the content spatially. Again, there's been no extra content added, just it's the way it's described. Similarly, we can change the view to look at a temporal view, so we can move through this object space based on when things occur. And also we've created an environment that aggregates the different objects around particular points of view. So we can look at things of interest on the island, objects that relate to the educational possibilities of the island, objects related to nature, for instance. So we can almost go full circle here and come back to marine life, and you would expect that somewhere in there is other stuff related to the marine life. So that's one example of using objects and a dynamic delivery of these environments to support this new way of understanding very complex spaces. Here's an environment where we've started to use both this capacity to bring together this rich information. So this is in fact a talk given by someone. The stream I've just restarted, so it will clear itself in a second. And as Nerina is talking here, her slide will change and we can start to or enjoy that particular object. What she's also done, if we stop it, is put a whole load of resources which include other objects that she's identified that are related to this. And then we can use her talk itself to start to go through and link directly to other ideas. So this means we're actually using the movie not just as a piece of information, but as a way of navigating other content and other connections with other people. So they're just some of the possibilities we're starting to uncover as we piece together this new realm that we can start to reconsider the models we use for education.